Washington.
This is boy, Marty for here once again.
Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is your boy Jamar for here once again, and this is a new episode of the Washington Post. Typically, for my channel, I would never really enjoy reporting or coming to report things of the political nature, or just, tragedies often, just because typically when I see it, I don't like to see that stuff because it puts me in a really negative, mindset. But honestly, like, from what's been going on really the past month, or really it's been going on longer than a month, but it just seems like not even in the past 3 weeks, it has just been case after case, news headline after news headline of our people, our African American brothers and sisters, just being slaughtered in cold blood. And it's all this outrage. It's all over social media. There's all these different opinions being pushed back and forth, and it's just really ugly, honestly. And the first case, at least the first case that I'm aware of that happened, was Alton Sterling, I believe that's how his name is pronounced, who originally, if I'm correct, was reported armed outside of I think it was a convenience store or a gas station, whatnot, selling CDs. Okay, and the officers, approached him, and I guess were trying to say that he didn't have a license to do so, or was trying to ask him all these different questions, and they shot and killed him. And you see pictures of him laid out, dead already, but you still see the picture of the police officer still aimed at. I believe he was shot like 6 times. For what? And then you have Philando Castile, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, him and his girlfriend, because I watched the short clip of his girlfriend explaining, what happened. Him and his girlfriend were driving, down the highway, and they were pulled over initially for the reason of a broken taillight. But I saw photographs or videos or stills or what have you from that night, and their lights, headlights and taillights, were both on. So whatever. So they were stopped because of a taillight, and then the officer came to the window and asked them to put their hands in the air. Now, it's been unusual. I've never seen anybody who have to put their hands in the air for being stopped in the car for a broken taillight. I don't understand that. And the young lady said that he asked them to put their hands in the air, but then he asked them to provide license and registration for the vehicle. The young man, or Philando, reached in his, try to get his wallet, probably from his, rear pocket or whatever. And I wanted to say that as he was reaching for his, ID and registration, he let the officer know that he was licensed to carry. And I don't know if that is the trigger that initially is supposed to set this officer off, because the officer then, tried to tell him, don't move, freeze, or what have you. But at the same time, you want him to keep his hands in the air. Then you want him to provide your license and registration. But at the same time, don't move. And because he was resisting, he got shot. And so now we have another man that's just lost his life. And she went to say that this man, every time that a African American person is gunned down and killed in cold blood, the media tries to dig far back 10, 20 years to a misdemeanor a fender bender misdemeanor that he had in 1993 to try to justify him being killed. I saw on Twitter a Caucasian woman putting pictures of Alton Sterling saying he wasn't an angel, he was a drunk. Isn't it ironic that his latest Facebook picture is him putting up the middle finger? And I'm like, what? First of all, you're trying to call him a drunk because he had a picture of a bottle in his hand. People who drink don't just because you've had a drink that night doesn't mean that you're a drunk. First of all. Second of all, how do you know this man's life and like because he put up the middle finger on his own personal Facebook profile, he's not an angel? So all of these reasons, because he likes to drink and because he took a picture of the middle finger up, that justifies him being killed. So if you've ever had a drink, young Caucasian woman, if you've ever had a drink and somebody just called you a drunk, would you think that would be accurate? Because you took a picture of you out at a night with your girls and had a martini and was, oh, this bitch is a drunk. She deserves to die. Do you see where the misinterpretation of logic is? So I don't want to be one of those that, discusses these things and just gets overly emotional and angry just because I don't like to be in that space, but this is fucking ridiculous. I've seen comparisons. People are trying to compare the Black Lives Matter movement or hashtag or, the fight in comparison to the Ku Klux Klan. Now, and everybody's, trying to say these all lives matter and all this other I don't want to call it nonsense. So here's the thing. Yes, all lives do matter. But those that are saying all lives matter are saying it believing that us saying that Black Lives Matters means that Hispanic, white, whichever other race, Asian, does not matter, and that's not the case. Of course we know that all lives matter, but in recent cases and these incidents of these killings and lives that are being taken away have been Black lives. And so, yes, all lives matter, but the way that you guys are behaving in these police departments in these various cities and towns are not reflecting that Black lives matter. So we feel like we have to reinforce and let you guys realize that Black lives matter. However, I don't know if it's because of Donald Trump. I don't know if it's because, there was a couple initial cases where these things happened and the police officer didn't get charged or, fired for it or what have you. But it's happening so frequently that I don't think people or these, crooked cops, because I know there's not all of them. There's also the argument that, not all cops are this bad, which is true. Sorry, I received a phone call, but it's true that not all cops are bad, but it's also true that, a few rotten apples can ruin the whole bunch. And by ruin, it makes people not only be afraid of the police, but they feel like they shouldn't respect the police because they already expect for the police to not respect them. Okay, they believe that all the officers are going to treat them crazy, talk to them crazy, possibly even shoot them. So they're going to always be on their guard or probably think the worst of the police before the interaction even starts. So and you know what? It's crazy because just last night I watched the Purge election year, right? And it's almost like those people, if you guys are familiar with the Purge series, I always say that nothing like that could ever really be the case. That could never be a real thing, like a Purge night where for 12 hours all crime, including murder, is legal. And what was interesting about this movie is that because the purge was happening during an election year, kind of like how we are today, and one candidate, which happened to be a woman, and the other candidate, which happened to be a man, the woman is the one who, I guess about maybe 15 or 18 years ago in the story, she lost her family to this night. And so she's trying to stop the purge because she knows that people who are of higher power, the government, the rich, that higher class benefits from this night, whereas those who are of lower class, the homeless, the blacks, the Hispanics, just the people who aren't as well off for whatever reason, those are the people who lose their lives. And because those people are being killed, the higher people, the government doesn't have to worry so much about so many people being on welfare. They don't have to worry about housing or funding homeless shelters and things like that. So they kind of use the purge to kind of filter out and weed out the minority groups. And it's crazy because it feels like black people are at a constant state of being on purge night. Like, we're just out here being killed, and these officers are not being, the justice is not being had for these people. And it's almost like it's legal to kill us. Like, nothing really happens to these people. They might get a slap on the wrist, or at least nothing that we can see, or nothing that I've noticed anyway. A lot of these cases happen, and there's all this outrage, but by the time we ever really see if anything is done against these officers, there's a new case that came up. Like, even just as I was supposed to record this yesterday, but even just between then and now, there was a case that happened in Dallas where there was a shooting of police officers, and then there was a whole, debate about that as well, and how, is this redemption? Like, should we care? And all this other stuff. And I hate that there's like a divide between like we're supposed to not care about their lives because they don't care about our lives, which in the long run is just going to create segregation again. And we don't want to, ultimately, I don't feel like we want to create that mindset, of being separation. Like, we shouldn't care about them because, they're white. It's just, in fact, we're supposed to be united, but it's just these select people who still have this ignorant mindset that's literally ruining it for everybody else. And the case in Dallas was the shooting. They had an initial suspect, and I believe I forget the official Twitter account. It was supposed to be a local news Twitter handle, if I'm not mistaken, and they put out a picture of a man and said, "This is our main suspect. Somebody tell him where we can find him." And it was a guy with it was an African American man who had a rifle, around his chest. And it turns out that was, the wrong person, and that Black Twitter, I guess people who, knew him or was able to find him or whatever, was able to track him down and showcase that wasn't him, and that he was actually licensed to carry that weapon. And they ended up finding the real culprit. I can't remember his name because he was sorry, they called me again, but they ended up finding the real culprit. And it was just so odd that when the person who was the main suspect was black, everybody was so, let's go get him, let's do this, let's do that. But when they found out that it wasn't an African American person, then they started withholding all information, like, oh, well, we have to look into for more details and this, that, and the fourth. And they called it an American crisis because, these officers were killed. But why wasn't it considered an American crisis when all of these, poor, unarmed African Americans were killed? Why is it not a crisis then? You see what I'm saying? And it's just, America is not the land of the free right now. We like to make it an illusion that it's the land of the free, but it's only the land of the free and home of the brave for some. At least it is right now. And it won't be the land of the free at all if we don't get out and exercise our right to vote in this year's upcoming election. I encourage you all to do that. If you have not registered, go to your, I know there's a website, even if you Google registering to vote in the state of wherever you live, just, you can only imagine if this is happening now, what it would be like if somebody who isn't really looking in our best interest is elected for the next 4 years. You know, so I'd say rest in peace to these victims. One thing I wanted to mention about Philando Castile was that the young lady was saying that this man didn't have a criminal record. He worked in elementary school. You know, these kids looked up to him, and it was just, he did not deserve to die. It's as simple as it was. He didn't break any laws. His taillight wasn't even really out, and all he did was try to do what the officer instructed him to do. But the officer just felt like being the judge, jury, you know, and the executioner, and take the matter into his own hands. And the system right now doesn't seem to be able to work in the favor of actual true justice. And we're just in a state of crisis. We're literally in a state of crisis as a race, as Black people. And it's good to have these outrages on Twitter. It's good to, you know, keep the conversation going. One more thing. I almost forgot, and I almost let this bitch get away with it. Wendy Williams. And I know my whole demeanor just changed because I just remembered this shit. Wendy got on her show. I saw this clip on the internet. Wendy got on her show and was talking about, you know, the speech that was made by Jesse at the BET Awards, you know, about Black people and, you know, the struggles that we've been having and what we're supposed to do to make it better. She confused the fuck out of me because she went on this tangent about how HBCUs and why there shouldn't be why they're wrong, or why should we have them? Like, you don't find any W or what did you call it? Historically white colleges. And I'm like, and then it was weird because nobody else in the audience clapped. Nobody else was just, you know, cheering her on, giving her straight "how you doing" bullshit this time. They were looking at her like, bitch, are you crazy? She was trying to make it seem like HBCUs are offensive when there aren't any supposed white historically Black institutions. But my thing is, first of all, Black HBCUs were made because Blacks at the time were not allowed to go to universities. All original universities were white institutions, historically white institutions. All of them by default were white institutions because they were the only people allowed to go there. We had to make our HBCUs so that our people had a place to go and get an education. So, Wendy, what the fuck are you talking about, bitch? Anyways, like I said, usually I don't like to discuss these things. I usually like to keep things light. I like to keep things just in, you know, pop culture, music, and entertainment. But I just couldn't just allow, because it's been all over the media, and I couldn't just, you know, let it go by without at least saying my little 2 cents for whatever it's worth. Whatever you guys have to say about it, leave it in the comments, and we can have a discussion. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
Like, share, subscribe.
Washington.